They look like they come from your worst nightmares. There's no evidence they exist, but all the scary stories about them still sometimes sound so real, passed down from generation to generation. Which one is your favorite? The first creature that probably comes to your mind is Bigfoot, a giant creature that reminds you of an ape and allegedly leaves extremely large footprints and other traces that make people in the area of the Pacific Northwest wonder if it's really there. It's so popular, other similar beasts got their own legends too. Like the Mogollon monster, something people also call the Arizona Bigfoot. Reported along the Mogollon Rim, this mysterious creature is 7 feet tall and has big red eyes. Stories say its body is covered with long reddish-brown or black hair, besides its face, chest, feet, and hands. It mimics coyotes, birds, and other wildlife, emitting strange whistle sounds at the same time. The creature tends to explore campsites when it gets dark. It builds nests out of twigs, pine needles, and leaves. And if you're in that area and someone is throwing stones from locations you can't see, yep, Mogollon monster. This creature is omnivorous, which means it eats both plants and animals. And it prefers to wander at night, lurking for innocent prey lost in the woods. Urayuli, a 10-foot mythical creature people say hides in the southwestern woodland parts of Alaska. It's a hulking giant beast known for its extremely long limbs. Legends say their lanky arms are so long they reach their ankles. The creature is covered in a thick coat of hair. The only thing you can see on its face, not covered in the hair, is the creature's eerily luminescent eyes. The legend says Urayuli use their glowing eyes to hypnotize their prey. But not us, since stories say they prefer to catch deer. And they're known to be kind towards humans. And some claim the Urayuli are actually just a type of Bigfoot. Wendigo. This terrifying creature is said to be hiding across the northern forests of Canada and the United States, always looking if there's some lost wanderer. The story says the Wendigo used to be a lost hunter. The freezing winters transformed him into a fierce 15-foot-tall beast with desiccated skin tightly pulled over its large, pointy bones. Stories about this creature showed up in the 20th century, and people say the beast still roams around the forest in long, cold winters, constantly looking for lost people he could grab from the darkness. Lake Worth monster. This scary creature that's part man, part goat is also called the island monster. This 7-foot-tall monster is so strong it could hurl car tires like they were just plastic toys. In a worst nightmare scenario, it could appear in the darkness, sailing from the treetops and fiercely landing with full force on the hood of passing cars. That's how the first people who reported its existence described it. Lake Worth is located west of Dallas and east of Fort Worth. There's a landmass in the middle of this mystical lake known as Greer Island. The legend says that's where this scary monster, also known as Fort Worth's answer to Bigfoot, roams. And that's where some skeptics and thrill seekers still go, wandering around and trying to discover if the legend is true. Lurking in the darkness with its scary red eyes, meet the Mothman, a humanoid beast reportedly seen in the 1960s in Point Pleasant in West Virginia. On one cold night in November of 1966, two young couples reported to the police that they saw a big gray creature with glowing red eyes. It looked like a flying man with wings around 10 feet wide. During the next couple of days, more and more people said they saw the same thing. Later, a wildlife biologist from West Virginia University told reporters that these descriptions fit the sandhill crane. It's a big American crane almost as tall as a human being. It has a 7-foot wingspan and circles of red around its eyes. The gigantic bird may have got out of its migration route and started these stories. Or did it really? Fresno night crawlers. They're not that tall, considering they're monsters, about 5 feet. The upper part of their body is pretty small, so most of their height is their legs. These creatures have allegedly made 2 appearances so far. Once, People saw them in Fresno, California. In contrast, the other time was in Yosemite National Park in California. Both times they were in videos of poor quality, so it wasn't easy to find details of their upper body. But the creature is considered thin and white with no arms. At least, we can't see them. It also has pretty short and stilt-like feet. Have you heard of the slide rock bolter? It's said to be hiding somewhere in the mountains of Colorado. To be precise, in Lizard Head Mountain, only a stone's throw southwest from Telluride. It's some sort of leviathan that lives on the land. This mountain whale carefully observes its surroundings with beady eyes while chilling atop Lizard Head. It hangs from the peak while its split, clawed tail faces its body downward. If anything steps into its territory, the beast lifts its malign fluke immediately and bolts down the mountainside, with its jaw full of razor-sharp teeth wide open. It gobbles whatever or whoever is in front of it, including miners, lost tourists, and loggers. It sweeps through trees and destroys all natural life that's been in its path for more than 100 years. Or at least that's what the legend says. Wow, that's the scariest one for me so far. Altamaha. Somewhere in southeastern Georgia, close to the mouth of the Altamaha River, there's a hissing sea monster hiding. It's one of the biggest rivers in Georgia that empties into the Atlantic Ocean, and the entire area that surrounds the river is full of small islands, canals, dikes, ponds, acres of marshes, and old rice fields. Perfect for such a monster to hide, don't you think? The story says this unusual cryptid has a sturgeon-like body, including a bony ridge on its top. Due to its front flippers, the creature swims like a dolphin. His snout reminds me of a crocodile. His teeth are large and sharp, whereas his eyes are big and protruding. The beast is green or gray with a white-yellowish underbelly and is up to 30 feet long. There's no physical evidence the Altamaha really lives there, but the legends date back centuries when people started talking about an enormous snake-like beast that hissed and bellowed. Loch Ness Monster, or how many like to call it, Nessie. This myth dates back from old times, all the way to a group of people that lived in ancient Scotland known as the Picts. The legend started to grow in the 1930s. Back then, a road near Loch Ness was finished, offering a nice view of the lake without bigger obstacles. And in April of 1933, a couple noticed there was a large animal. They compared it to a prehistoric monster or dragon. Most people imagine it as a plesiosaur, which is basically a marine dinosaur. The beast quickly crossed the couple's car's path and then disappeared below the water's surface. Later that year, some researchers even found big footprints. They believed they were from a pretty soft-footed solid creature around 20 feet long. Later, some determined the tracks were the same as the ones that a hippopotamus leaves. Plus, scientists said the lake wasn't that nutrient-rich for such a large predator. There are not enough animals to support such a beast at the top of the food chain. But the legend about a giant mythological creature has moved on, and still makes people across the world wonder if there's really something hiding deep down in the dark, murky waters of Loch Ness.
You're hiking in the wilderness, looking for a safe spot to set up camp. All you can hear are leaves and branches cracking under your footsteps. Some squirrels are running up a tree over there. But suddenly, something unexpected happens. You notice something weird in the distance in between the trees. It kind of looks like a concrete structure of some sort. Weird. At this point, you're at least 20 miles deep in the woods, and there are no nearby towns or villages, as far as you know. So you decide to go off the trail with your friends to get a closer look. But as you get nearer, you realize that it's actually a 12-foot-tall staircase, and it's leading to nowhere. What's it doing there in the middle of literally nowhere? And it doesn't even lead to anything. You put on your Sherlock Holmes cap and investigate. So maybe there used to be an old house or mansion here that collapsed over the years, and the only thing left is this staircase. But weirdly enough, after circling the bizarre structure, you realize there's no trace of any ruins or even foundations. It's like someone just sliced a staircase off their house, cake style, and plopped it here for no reason. Okay. You and your friends aren't really into getting a whole lot closer. Something feels wrong. The longer you look at this weird structure, the more you feel a super creepy presence. Something tells you you should probably leave the area as fast as possible. You can't explain the feeling or take your eyes off the creepy staircase. You take out your phone and snap some pictures. Then, after a lot of hesitation, you take a few steps closer and notice that the stairs don't seem to be all that ancient, a few decades old at best. There's moss growing out from some cracks. Your friends have had enough. They ditch you and run back off to the trail, leaving you alone on the staircase. You put your foot carefully on the first step. Wham! Adrenaline rush. As you ascend to the top, someone touches your shoulder. You jump and turn around. All you see is black. As weird as this sounds, discoveries of random staircases illogically found in the woods are surprisingly common. Some are made of wood, others are bricks or stones. Some look ancient, while others look like they were finished yesterday. The one thing they all have in common, they all lead to absolutely nowhere, and they're all found in super mysterious locations. One of the most famous ones is in Chesterfield, New Hampshire, a long medieval-looking staircase made of stones with Roman arches in the middle of the woods. It's believed to have been part of Madame Antoinette Sherry's castle. She was a big singer back in Paris. The castle dates back about 100 years, and it was later discovered again in 1962. This time, there was nothing but a staircase. Another mysterious ancient staircase dates back to 9,000 years ago. It's in a forest in Italy. It looks like a series of stairs that led to a tiny platform at the top. Why go through all the trouble of building the thing if it leads to nowhere? Well, some experts think it could have been some sort of ritual tower, but your guess is as good as theirs. Some of the more modern staircases found in the woods also have an added bonus. They come with their own urban legends. Gee, would that be a 2-story or 3-story staircase? One of the most popular stories comes from the Philippines, where a forest ranger called Torkik allegedly went out on one of his routine patrols to look for missing people deep in the local jungle. That's where he claims he found some seriously out-of-place stone staircases. They even had weird markings on them. To get a better look at what was around him, he decided to climb up one of them. Just then, he was approached by a vicious stray dog that forced him further up the stairs. A few hours later, he came back to the village. Only thing was, he had been missing for 5 years. Was that staircase a time-traveling portal? Another account allegedly dates back to the 1940s, around the time of the Roswell UFO mystery. A man who claimed to be a scientist was sent to assist in investigating one of the many animal-related cases that kept popping up. Little did he know, this 1 to 2 week investigation would end up lasting 6 months. His team encountered a random wooden staircase in the woods that seemed to emit some type of frequency. They camped around 100 feet from it that night, but the next morning, it vanished. All that was left was a black burn mark where the staircase was. 2 days later, it reappeared out of nowhere, 160 feet from its original location. The team wanted to get a sample of the wood to send it off to the lab. There was one problem. No matter how hard they tried, it was impossible to chip off a piece. The wood from the staircase was apparently indestructible. These weird mystery stairs have been around since ancient Cambodia. Right in the middle of the jungle is an abandoned 2,000-foot-long staircase leading to, nowhere. According to experts, this staircase was built about 1,000 years ago. They don't know for sure, but they think it led to an ancient city. Sadly, over the years, that city is now completely covered by the dense jungle. Maybe it was an important meeting spot for travelers and merchants coming from all over the continent. Well, back to your story. You feel a strange presence behind you. You turn around, probably one of your friends snuck up on you or something. But then, you realize there was no one behind you. You're the only one around. You freak out. Something is definitely wrong here. So you rush down the stairs and bolt back to your friends, panting and startled. You start to tell your friends what happened, but they don't believe you. They think you're just trying to scare them even more. But the emotion on your face, it looks legit. There's real panic in your eyes, the kind you just can't fake. Shadow or wind or whatever that thing was, your fear's real. You all agree that you should stay away from the stairs, and it's probably best if you go back home, right now. I guess camping out there overnight just wasn't meant to be. As soon as you get home, you open your phone and check out your gallery. But no, you scroll through photo after photo. The staircase, it isn't there. None of the pictures have any staircases in them. Just a small, flat clearing with nothing but trees around, no weird shadows, nothing. Your friends have the same experience. Your eye twitches and you look over your left shoulder. You're in the safety of your own home, but you suddenly feel the same presence you felt on that staircase. Oh no! Everything goes black. But you can relax. Most of these stories are just urban legends, told to give you the heebie-jeebies. The internet has a way of spreading rumors faster than the speed of light. Most of these stairs might have even been built on purpose just recently. One weekend woodshop project, a couple of photos, and you too could be a sensation on every urban legend website. Then you just tear it down, take a photo to show it magically disappeared, and just like that, you're an internet superstar. But let's say you find some real stairs on your weekend camping trip. They're most likely the remnants from an old house or a cabin that got demolished or just collapsed after it was abandoned. Hey, it's 2021. There's a logical explanation for just about everything these days. That presence you felt was most likely your own mind playing tricks on you. When you see something in real life that looks like something you saw on a website or a scary movie, your mind starts to work overtime, and you can actually see something or feel something that's not even there. That's what some people say happens when you get hypnotized. You want to see something so bad, and you do. That's probably what happened. Or was it?
Shh! Do you hear something? It's nothing. Just water dripping. You're walking alone down a dark corridor with nothing but your phone lighting your way. You see a large figure at the end of the hallway. You can't make out what it is, but it's a large figure with broad shoulders and a lab coat. You pause and have nowhere to go but forward towards the figure or back to the staircase. Suddenly, the figure starts sprinting towards you. You freeze in your spot. 4 hours earlier. You and your two friends decided to sneak into an abandoned chemical plant to film some cool videos for social media. You were against the idea because it's creepy, but your friends insist that it will get many views and go viral. So you grab your bikes, flashlights, and some self-defensive gear and make your way there. It's nightfall, so you hook up your bike's flashlights and pedal off. After a couple of miles, you divert onto an off-road path through a thick forest until you reach a large steel fence encircling the plant. You and your friends have been here before, but you never went past the fence. Despite all the warning signs, you get out your pliers and start cutting the fence. The legend is that this plant was abandoned decades ago after operating at full capacity. Then, one day, an accident occurred, leading to a massive evacuation from the plant and the city around it. Ever since then, the plant was emptied. No health hazards are going on, but people who live in the town nearby have reported seeing things. Figures were moving in the shadows. Random lights flicker in the plant, even though no one is there. There have been reports of loud screams in the middle of the night. After hearing these stories, the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you shudder with fear. Your friends, on the other hand, are giddy and excited. After cutting through the fence, you leave your bikes and make your way to the plant. You pass the parking lot with some cars parked in their designated place. Other cars look like they were abandoned, with the doors still open. You reach the entrance of the plant, but it's chained up. Your friends rattle it, but it won't budge. Well, I guess the adventure is over. But your friend takes a rock and smashes it through a window, and you and your friends climb through. You enter the plant, and it's pitch black. The floor is sticky, and the air is dusty. You whip out your flashlights and light up the room. It's covered in black material that's hard to distinguish. Some objects are tossed over, as if people were just trying to make it to the exit. So far, nothing seems that creepy. The plant is huge, so there'll be plenty of time to explore. Your friend gets out her phone and starts filming live on social media. She's narrating the whole trip, and many people are viewing it. They're commenting and sharing their thoughts. Suddenly, you hear a scream coming from deep within the building. You and your friends hug each other in fear and almost run out. But your friend recording what's happening insists you move forward. The path is long and confusing. You find a map of the plant that tells you where to go. You see that you're only in the reception lobby, and there are still plenty of places to go. The flickering lights come from the second floor in a room facing the town, which is not too far from where you're at. You move upstairs in a very slow attempt, but the stairs are unstable. After a few steps up, one of the stairs breaks, and your leg is caught up at the bottom, where you almost fall. Your friends help you up. You reach the second floor and try to find the room with the flickering lights. The only problem is that the lights go off randomly. Or maybe it's not so random. You decide to split up to cover more ground. Good thing you have walkie-talkies to communicate, but it's still creepy. You tiptoe into each room. The displaced objects you see show how the people just packed up and ran away. Each room is creepier than the next. You point your flashlight all over, trying to find some clues to anything that might explain anything. You get some static from your walkie-talkie, and it gets louder and louder. You can't turn it off. Then you hear some voice behind the static crackling noise. It doesn't sound like any of your friends. It says, in a high-pitched shriek. You almost drop your walkie-talkie, and then the lights in the room you're standing in start to flicker. You freak out and run outside to your friends. You bump into many objects and knock them down. Your friends rush to you to see what's happening. You explain everything to them, and they head to the room to see if it all makes sense. But they don't spot anything weird. The lights are not flickering, and the walkie-talkies are silent. Are you just imagining it? Your friend is still filming everything live. There are even more people hopping on the live stream. You don't want to waste any more time, so you and your friends go deeper into the plant. This time it's completely pitch black, since there aren't any windows around. It's creepy. You see some lab coats scattered across the floor, resembling people. There are rooms on each side of the wall with machines and gizmos. Most of the rooms are locked and need a passcode to enter. The only problem is that the power's out. The batteries of your flashlight begin to give out, so you switch to lights on your phones. Your friend is still filming live, but as you go deeper, the signal cuts out. Even walkie-talkies don't work. It's very damp, and the room is echoing with creepy sounds. Each step resonates around the extended hallway, making it sound like someone is stalking you. That's when you hear footsteps coming from one of the rooms. The legend says that there's a creature living here with extended arms, sharp teeth, and glowing red eyes. It wanders around the corridors, scratching the walls with its sharp claws. Some say it's lost and has been trying to find a way out, while others say it's a dog that found its way inside. Your friend records everything on her phone without going live to upload the footage later. Suddenly, you hear something you don't ever want to hear, scratching on the wall. You and your friends look at each other with your eyes popping out and run. You're again knocking over things and making a lot of noise. You reach a dead end. We're at the spot. You see the large figure with broad shoulders and what appears to be a lab coat. It starts racing towards you. You try all the doors in the hallway, and finally, one of them opens. You go inside and slam the door shut. The creature starts slamming on the door, trying to get in. You're recording this on your phone. You crawl to a glass window to see what it is, but you only get a glimpse of the creature fleeing. You lost your friends and your way. You want to get out of here. A map of the plant inside the room shows you the way out. You check to see if it's clear, and you head out. You take a picture of the map to see where to go, but you're going around in circles. You hear your friends outside and rush to them. They were trying to call you, but lost you when they scattered. You leave the plant, get on your bikes, and head back home. As you reach the main road outside the forest, you turn around to see if anything weird is happening at the plant. You see the lights flicker in the same room you were in. You shudder and go home. Don't worry, none of it was real. The lights flickering were just the battery-powered lamps randomly going off, and the creature that was supposedly chasing you was your friends pulling a prank on you. There's no creature there, and the other sounds you heard are some stray animals scared of all the commotion. The video got a lot of views and went viral on social media. However, someone pointed out a figure in the glass reflection during the live stream. What could it be?
When you think of theme parks, you normally imagine laughter and fun times. But once they're closed and abandoned, now that's a whole different story. Let's take a look at some of them. You decide to take a trip to New Orleans to visit Six Flags. When you arrive there, you discover the theme park is deserted. The sign that says "Closed for Storm" is still standing. You're feeling adventurous, so you let yourself past the crackling gates. Is it chilly in here, or is it just me? You walk past a swimming pool, and it looks like there's someone in there. You get closer, and oh no, it's an alligator. Better run and leave that thing alone. You keep exploring the site. The park took inspiration from the city's French architecture, but today the buildings are dirty, the windows are all shattered, and there are unusual items everywhere. Say, what is this vintage rollerblade doing here? The park closed during the hurricane, and it was left standing under 7 feet of water. No wonder the metal rides are all rusty now. This carousel doesn't look too inviting to me. We'll have to come back another time. Hey, at least you got some cool-looking pictures, right? Let's make this next one even more exciting. Imagine you plan to visit Dada Park at night. Somewhere in the countryside of Belgium, you'll find a creepy theme park derelict from many years ago. You have nothing with you but the floodlight on your phone. You see the entrance of a bridge and start to make your way across. The bridge sways and creaks. Just FYI, you are crossing one of the longest hanging bridges in Europe. You made it through. Whew. The surrounding woods are terrifying, and several deserted attractions start popping up along the way. The forest has taken this twirling swing set. This huge slide would probably break if you tried to use it now. The park is in terrible condition. No wonder they closed it down due to security reasons. Best to leave it now and come back in the daylight. Your next stop is Wonderland Eurasia, also known as Anka Park in Turkey. The theme park opened in March 2019 but closed shortly after. Once inside the gigantic complex, you stumble upon what looks like an empty warehouse but ends up being an indoor roller coaster. Everything was left intact and is as good as new. You even take a quick sit on one of the roller coaster carts, perfectly lined up for the next ride. If you're feeling really adventurous, you can walk on the rails of the indoor coaster. Just be careful not to fall down. Oh, over there are the Flintstones. It's almost like a childhood deja vu here in the youngsters section of the park. On the horizon, you see what looks like the Jurassic World and decide to check it out. There are neglected statues of huge T-Rexes and fake skeletons of dinosaurs lying across the floor. Unlike the other derelict parks, everything here is new, which makes it all the more strange. Nara Dreamland was meant to be Japan's Disney World, but the project failed over time. Today, it's inhabited by moist ivies and strange birds. To get in, you'll pass a drawbridge and head into a pastel-colored castle. Your heart might beat faster than usual when you pass a fog-covered roller coaster. Was that meant to be the Matterhorn? Yup. Everything about this place says you shouldn't be there. Tossed on the park's floor, you'll see reels of tickets and misconfigured stuffed animals. How about walking into an empty diner? It's bizarre how the tables and stools are still in place. Strolling through what was once a gift shop, you'll see empty shelves and an old-school cash machine. I'd say you better leave before anything comes out of here. Now, if I say Joyland, what do you imagine? The name says it all, right? But if you decide to visit Joyland today, I bet you'll have a very chilling time. Down in Wichita, Kansas, you'll find a once famous but now empty theme park filled with eerie sights. A pale blue slide in the middle of a forest? Check. Empty warehouses straight out of a horror movie? Check. A wacky shack that looks truly wacky? You bet. But if you visit it on a good sunny day, I'd say the park is weird but still has some beauty. Joyland was built in the late 1940s. It carries a vintage aura that goes well with the neglected atmosphere. Hey, look at this rusty yellow Ferris wheel with a stripped ticket box in front. I dare say it's almost charming. The Magic Harbor Amusement Park is not that magical after all. Just outside of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you'll find an old theme park left to nature. Here, bumper cars are not bumping anymore. If you get into a hedge maze, you'll probably never find your way out of it. I'm not sure what you'll see running around amongst the rusty rides, so good luck if you're planning a visit. If you're looking for somewhere to cool down on a hot and sunny afternoon, how about Disney's River Country? Just kidding. You're definitely not going to want to get in the water there. The park was built in the 1970s and closed in 2001. Pay a visit to the Whitewater Rapids on foot instead of floating down the fake river. You'll have about 330 feet to stroll along a very bumpy pathway. Maybe you'll see hanging tires that served as swing sets out in the bay. You can even try zip lining if you trust the cable. To add a little more creepy to this story, the park was closed down due to a dangerous bacteria that thrived in warm bodies of water. Are you sure you don't fancy a swim? When you think Italy, I bet you think pasta and pizza, and a leaning tower somewhere. Well, in the south of Italy sits the empty Mythological amusement park. The entrance still says welcome, but people stopped coming a few years ago. The site is covered in grass everywhere. The toy-like architecture is still there. Beneath the forgotten rails of an open-air roller coaster, you can almost hear the screams of excitement of people on the ride. This part of the park is usually prohibited, but there's no one around to control that now. It might be scary to be here, but adrenaline sure is running high. This next theme park is vacant only during a certain time of the year, but it still gives the true heebie-jeebie vibes. You have to catch a train from the city and travel to the end of the line till you reach the park. Coney Island is a seasonal park, open only from the middle of spring to the middle of fall. If you want to catch its unnerving vibe, you have to visit in winter. Then, you'd walk through the rows of empty stalls with the fairy string lights still hanging above your head. It looks frozen in time as all the rides lay shut down. Speaking of which, sometimes it gets frozen for real. Under many inches of snow, Coney Island is a little less disturbing. Then again, snow does have that effect on landscapes, but the park is empty and deserted nonetheless. I bet it's a great photo op. Now, be sure to tell me in the comments which abandoned amusement park you found the creepiest. Hey, you know me, I won't be checking any of these out. I'll let you go first.
They used to call this island the Paris of the East, mostly because it had beautiful buildings with large gardens and impressive stone archways. But now, it's nothing like it used to be, with all the architecture almost entirely covered in tree roots and vines. Ross Island is a small territory in the Indian Ocean. It's located east of the Indian city of Port Blair. Though initially thought of as a jail, Ross Island eventually became a luxurious resort for the local administrators. They called this island a real treat for its more privileged residents. It boasted opulent bungalows, Stained glass window panels brought all the way from Italy, neatly kept gardens, tennis courts, and even swimming pools. Soon after the complex was closed in 1937, a powerful earthquake hit the island. It caused a lot of damage, making it even more uninhabitable. The island is now in the administration of India and has become a tourist attraction for people interested in abandoned towns. Pieces of German architecture still lie hidden in the Namibian desert. The city of Kolmanskop, Namibia, was a luxury location at its peak in the early 1900s when German workers settled here looking for diamonds. This abandoned town used to have everything from a ballroom to a hospital and even a bowling alley. It all started to decline somewhere in the late 1910s when another diamond-packed location was found nearby. So, most of the people living here moved, leaving everything behind in search of more money. Kolmanskop has since been slowly occupied by sand dunes, while the hot temperature and low moisture help to preserve the buildings. This ghost town is also available for visitors. If it sounds interesting, you can book a tour in the nearby town of Lüderitz. Another abandoned castle dominates the view in Krakow, a city in Italy. The whole village sits atop a cliff that's 1,312 feet high. The founders liked this location since they knew it would be easy to defend themselves from unwanted guests. But the castle, built in the 1300s, soon became overwhelmed by landslides and earthquakes. Even though it has no residents anymore, the medieval city often comes alive during the various local festivals that take place here in the summer months. The locals also offer tours and tell amazing stories about the location. One of the highlights of the tour is a statue that seemingly came out of nowhere and now lies in a body of water. Hidden away in the Montana mountains, Garnet Ghost Town tells the well-known American story of the West's gold rush. The town's history goes back to the 1890s, when they found a lot of gold in the Nancy Hanks mine. During its glory days, Garnet had almost 1,000 residents. Even though it's in a relatively secluded location, it had saloons, hotels, stores, a school, and other features of a regular little town. In 1905, when most of the gold had already been taken away, most mines were left behind, so only a couple of hundred residents stayed in Garnet. The final straw came in 1912, when a fire damaged most of the town's buildings. So, by the 1940s, Garnet was completely abandoned. It soon became a hotspot for treasure hunters looking for furnishings and artifacts. That was until a preservation campaign started in the 1970s. It ended with the town being declared a historic district in 2010. To this day, Garnet is one of the best preserved ghost towns in the area. Hashima Island is another abandoned location that tells us that when people leave, nature takes over. This mysterious place was even featured in a James Bond movie because of its ghostly landscape. It used to be a well-known spot in Japan for undersea coal mines, as it was opened in 1881. In 1959, at its peak, there were over 5,000 people living here, including mine workers and their families. As soon as the mines started going dry, sometime in 1970, people started to slowly depart the island, leaving it completely abandoned in 3 months. Even though nobody lives there these days, there are a lot of tourists here that drop off to wander around the abandoned homes, swimming pools, stores, and factories. Another town that started with a mining company back in 1881 is Calico, California. People discovered the location was packed with silver, so it soon became home to over 500 silver mines and 3,000 residents. It used to feature hotels, general stores, restaurants, and a school. There was even a local newspaper printed here called the Calico Print. But by 1986, the town had become empty. One of the former locals decided to buy it and began its restoration, making it a registered historical landmark. It even has a museum of the Old West available for tourists. One of the most interesting attractions that were rebuilt is the 1-mile-long Calico and Odessa Railroad. It currently goes through the steep canyons and hills, and even passes the old mines and buildings north of Calico. Approximately 1/3 of the town is original, while the rest consists of newer buildings that are replicas meant to recreate the spirit of its past. If you're a fan of cars, you might have heard of Henry Ford as the famous American industrialist who founded the Ford Motor Company in 1903. But in 1927, he began working on another one of his ambitious dreams, Fordlandia. It was supposed to be a massive rubber plantation located near the Tapajos River in Brazil, since he needed a reliable source of rubber for his car tires and hoses. His vision was to design a town complete with swimming pools, a golf course, living bungalows, and even weekly square dancing sessions for the locals. This project was unfortunate to begin with, since the local rubber trees soon got infected with leaf fungus. Even though Henry Ford invested a staggering $20 million into this potential income source, the town failed to produce the needed rubber. He had nothing left to do but to sell it to Brazil in 1945, and soon it was completely abandoned. Many of its buildings are still standing, but have been taken over by the surrounding nature. You can still see curious tourists wandering through it to this day. During its glory days, Hampi was the second largest city in the world. Looking at its ruins today, it's hard to imagine this Indian city used to be filled with temples and bazaars, and that it served as an important center of the Mauryan Empire in the 14th and 15th centuries. It was destroyed in the 16th century, but it still has beautifully preserved forts and markets. It became part of the UNESCO World Heritage in 1986, aiming to protect its buildings, such as the Lotus Mahal, a stone structure that was carved to resemble a lotus flower opening to the sun. A tourist village was constructed back in 1920 along the shore of Epicuén, a salt lake about 370 miles southwest of Buenos Aires in Argentina. It was designed to provide people with a busy city life a breath of fresh air near the restorative salt waters of the nearby lake. It was soon equipped with a railroad station and ended up having a population of more than 5,000 residents. The project was also destined to fail soon enough, as the unusual amount of rain at that time caused Lake Epicuén to swell. In 1985, the water took over the local dam, and the town was flooded. The waters were so deep that they even reached a depth of 33 feet in 1993. They only began to recede in 2009 and left behind the remaining buildings, literally encrusted in salt. No one came back to the town except for Pablo Novak, who returned here back in 2012 and was the only resident of Villa Epicuén at the time.
Are you afraid of the dark? There are some places where you don't want to be in. Deep inside the mines is already scary, but it's the stories behind it that make my skin crawl. The Ringwood mine in New Jersey might sound like a typical mine for some people, but for others, it's a place that no one wants to go. It was once a thriving mine with one of the largest iron productions in the world. More than 100 years ago, in the early 1900s, people abandoned the mine, and it's still open for curious tourists to take a peek. During its heyday, thousands of workers would get up every day and prepare themselves to work in very dangerous conditions. The mine was prone to cave-ins and various accidents that happened regularly. People were getting underpaid even though they knew how dangerous it was to be there. Think less than $1 per day to get dirty and without sunlight for most of your day. But that's not the reason why people nowadays avoid it. It's because there were reports of paranormal activity down there. Some of the locals claim they heard footsteps and voices originating from inside the mines years before it was abandoned. Some people saw figures walking around their homes while holding lanterns in their hands, something which was very common back in those days. Although people have claimed to hear these strange noises, there's no evidence to suggest that it was anything paranormal. Back in those days, between the 1800s and the early 1900s, there weren't any proper treatments or precautions for safety and health. People needed to work, and this was a quick way of earning money. No one ever thought about being down a mining shaft was scary or not. Imagine you're one of those workers who are about to finish your shift when the lantern above you starts to die out. You get some matches and try to ignite them, but no luck. After a while, you realize that it's just you down there, and everyone else has left. You pack up your gear and make your way out following the string of lights that were placed strategically so that no one gets lost down there. As you make your way through the narrow path, you start hearing voices coming from behind the walls. At first, you don't think much of it considering the reverberation of sounds within the mines. But then, you listen closely and realize that these sounds seem like they're literally coming from within the walls that are too thick to be heard from outside. You glue your ear to the walls and hear someone call your name. You jolt and run towards the mouth of the cave. However, the lights are flickering and the voices are getting louder and louder. The voices are jumbling together, creating an incoherent mix of weird gibberish and what appears to sound like someone chanting your name. Your heart is racing and you're sweating profusely. You don't really know where you're going since everything looks the same. Suddenly, you hear the sound of rumbling coming from the belly of the mine, and then silence. Everything is black. That's what it would feel like if you were a miner during those days. Back to the creepy stories. In West Riding, England, the name Oak's Pit strikes fear into the local community. The people of Barnsley remember that the mining site was one of the mining disasters in British history on December 12, 1866. The gases inside the mines ignited a fire, causing a major explosion. The fire spread and raged on for many days, destroying the mining equipment and wooden supports that were built. Finally, around 100 tons of coal collapsed into a crater at the mouth of the shaft, sealing it for good. However, very recently, people began to notice something strange. Quite recently, a team specialized in otherworldly phenomena decided to investigate the site to try and figure out what happened there. They got around to see if there was anything left that they could communicate with. In the end, the team concluded that this place was indeed freaky. There wasn't enough evidence to prove that the place was haunted. During the early 1900s, there was a silver rush in Alaska in the western part of the Wrangell Mountains. The Tonopah Mining District, which is now a museum, was part of a park that hosted plenty of buildings, such as a blacksmith shop and a hospital, among others. While there isn't any particular story like the previous ones, this mine is known to be haunted. There are plenty of theories behind it. Some say it's ancient spirits occupying the mines, while others say it's from the prospectors who used to work there. Either way, you can easily get a guided tour in and around the area, even at night if you're brave enough to go. Mining has always been a part of human history. The first metals to have ever been mined were gold and copper. Some scientists have found evidence of copper pipes to be more than 5,000 years old. Copper was necessary for the next stage of human advancement, as it helped us with technology for defending ourselves and trading. Ever heard of the term luck of the Irish? That's actually a mining term during the gold and silver rushes in Western America, when most of the luck was going to the Irish miners who were finding everything. In 1863, the Vulture Mine in Arizona was thriving with gold, as if the name of the mine wasn't creepy enough. Up until 1946, it was producing millions of ores of gold, but in between, the mine closed for certain times. Many investigators decided to look around the mine to see if there was anything strange happening inside. According to them, they heard some noise coming from above when they were inside. The locals of the area later chased them out since they were trespassing. The Atlas coal mine opened and closed quickly between 1936 and 1979 in Alberta, Canada. The coal was mined to produce electricity and heating. The mine was known for having 2 shafts, both of which were connected by a tunnel at its base. The owners of the mines decided to build houses for their workers and their families, since they knew they were creating many jobs. They eventually built a school, a hospital, and a library. But in 1979, the mine closed due to an accident, and ever since then, the mining town was abandoned. Many people have reported seeing some lights inside the buildings, despite them being empty, as well as hearing weird noises from within the walls. Some remarkable things were discovered in mines, including the mighty Titan boa. This giant serpent was slithering around, roughly 58 million years ago, and was more than 40 feet in length, and weighed as much as a black rhino today. The coal miners in Colombia were digging out some coal when they discovered the fossil of this giant snake. Initially, they thought it was an anaconda, but it was much bigger than that. Imagine making that discovery. Now, imagine roaming through a mine and discovering antique European cars dating back to the 1930s. In 2016, a Belgian teacher was going through a French mine when he discovered the tunnels which led to the cars. It's believed that they were kept there as a secret stash, but no one claimed them back. Even though they're all rusty, their value certainly didn't drop. If you ever wanted to visit the world's largest freshwater dive resort, then we have the Bonne Terre in a lead mine in Missouri to thank for that. It was a fully functioning mine up until 1962 when it shut down. The company that was operating it pulled the plug, including the water pumps. Slowly, but surely, water began to rise and fill the mine, and by the 1970s, the 3 lowest levels were completely submerged. It then became known as the world's largest underground freshwater lake, and was named the Billion-Gallon Lake. Most of the mining equipment is still underwater, and there are dozens of miles to discover. Count me in.
The floorboards creak under your feet with every step you take. There's barely any light in this narrow hallway as small candles flicker on their sconces on the walls. The air is cold, damp, and deafeningly silent, save for the sound of your footsteps and every breath you take. As you open the door at the end of the hallway, you find yourself in a beautifully decorated room where there's an old wooden piano, majestic candelabra, and many portraits on each of the walls. Out of all the paintings you see, there is one that sends shivers down your spine. The face of this man is long, with piercing, deep-set eyes, long black hair, and a mustache. He's wearing an imposing crown on his head. What is it about this man that's so strange and frightening? Are you sure you want to know? Welcome to Bran Castle, an architectural jewel hidden in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania. Or, as you might know it from its more popular name, Dracula's Castle. Though, by all accounts, Vlad III of Wallachia was indeed quite a special kind of ruler, not all the things that were attributed to him were actually true. For example, he never actually lived here in this castle. But his true legacy was what inspired the British author Bram Stoker to create the now famous character Dracula in his book of the same name, published in 1897. Safe to say, Stoker might have gone a bit overboard with the story, given that he never actually visited Bran Castle. Just to be clear, it's Bran Castle with an N and Bram Stoker with an M. Odd coincidence, I'm sure. This building, however, remains to this day a source of intrigue and mystery for tourists, coming from all over the world to see intriguing things like a secret passageway that used to be hidden behind a fireplace. Speaking of intriguing, Larnac Castle in New Zealand has an equally spooky vibe to it. To say nothing of its architectural beauty, legend says that the initial owner, named William Larnac, built a 3,000 square foot ballroom here for his favorite daughter Kate on her 21st birthday. Visitors here have experienced all sorts of weird phenomena, so much so that the building was once even visited by special paranormal investigators. Some castles have such a frightening atmosphere, they even make it to the big screen, like Castle Loma, located in Toronto, Canada. It is a Gothic-style castle that was featured in at least 4 Hollywood movies. Sure, that's partly due to the wonderful architecture there, but there's also years' worth of reported unusual sightings in the area, which add to the mystery. Berg Eltz, a castle located in Germany that dates back to 1157, also made our list of enigmatic buildings. It has only a limited number of rooms that are available for the public, but out of all of them, there is one that generates a lot of buzz between tourists. It is the bedroom of Countess Agnes, who lived here in the 15th century. Her bed and part of her attire are still on display in the room. This castle has been used as an important landmark in various video games because of its particular style, which looks more like a fortress. Also in Germany, there's an interesting construction named Frankenstein Castle. That's right, it's the palace that inspired Mary Shelley's renowned novel of the same name. And more than that, a lot of Gothic and Romantic literature at the time. The name comes from the ancient Germanic tribe called the Franks, and Stein, which is German for stone, a common German naming convention. About an hour north of Prague, in the Czech Republic, there is a castle that's interesting, to say the least. It has no kitchen, no fortifications, and legend says that at the time that it was finished building, nobody wanted to live there. That's probably because Hauska Castle is built on top of a very large hole in the ground, which, according to legend, is bottomless. Maybe. Who knows? Japan has a mysterious castle of its own called Himeji Castle that dates all the way back to the year 1333. It's one of the best remaining samples of feudal Japanese architecture, featuring many of its classic staples, like its use of wood and multiple sliding doors. The castle is deeply connected to local folklore, specifically to the story of Okiku, a girl that was falsely accused of losing some valuable dishes and was punished for it, but now haunts the castle as a spirit seeking vengeance. The Castle of Good Hope in South Africa doesn't inspire a lot of hope in its visitors, despite its name. Maybe because it supposedly features a bell that rings by itself? Or perhaps because lights there often switch on and off by themselves too. I guess we'll never know. Have you ever heard the Italian legend about a little girl with blue hair? Then you might have heard about the enticing Montebello Castle, north of Milan. The story says her mother used to dye her hair with various herbs that gave that particular shade of blue to her hair. Because of her looks, she was nicknamed Azzurrina, as azzurro means light blue in Italian. It is also said that she wasn't allowed to ever leave the castle and was always under constant supervision of her parents and castle guards. Who knows? She might still be there to this day. Now, if you're looking to actually stay in one of these chilling castles, you may want to consider Castle Rzeszów, located in the city of the same name in Poland. Since it's now being used as a hotel, it attracts a lot of tourists looking for that magical, regal experience. Just make sure to book a room as far away from the former dungeons as possible. Just saying. This one you've probably already heard of, and maybe even visited, since it's one of the most famous British landmarks, the Tower of London. Because throughout its history, which dates back to the 11th century, this construction was used for a lot of different things, from royal residencies to prisons, it is indeed associated with a lot of unusual happenings. One of the most notable stories is that of the famous Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII, and mother of Elizabeth I. A tale of tragedy in the face of political intrigue. Coningsborough Castle in South Yorkshire is an equally impressive structure, sporting a beautiful view over South Yorkshire itself. Don't be fooled by the magnificent sightings, though, as many visitors have reported getting the feeling of strange gusts of wind blowing by them every now and then. For all you dog lovers out there, Norway has a castle especially for you. Akershus Castle was built around the year 1300, and its most fascinating story is that of a magical dog named Malkanisa that was said to have guarded the gates of the castle, so much so that people could hardly ever approach its grounds. This next one has to be one of the most beautiful castles in the world, and you've surely seen it in posters, on TV, and maybe even on Instagram. Mont Saint-Michel is located on an island off the coast of Normandy and was built in the 8th century. It's not only a masterpiece because of its location and architecture, but it's also an important symbol of French history. However, people don't just come here to marvel at its beauty. They come to find out for themselves about the many strange rumors that it's cultivated over the years. If you want to visit this one, though, it's a bit tricky. The whole structure is built on a shallow bay that floods with water in the high tide and recedes on the low. These tides alternate roughly once every 6 hours, so you need to plan your visit carefully if you don't want to end up stranded for hours. The Slovenian fortress Predjama is not only renowned for its spook factor, but it's also part of the Guinness Book of Records as the largest cave castle in the world. It has stood proud in the middle of a 403-foot-high cliff for the past 800 years. Talk about adding suspense. Apart from its obviously unique location, it's also famous for the various secret tunnels that were built to provide safe passage in and out of the castle. It's also home to a colony of bats. You know, lots of people are afraid of them, but they're actually very sweet. Another one of those places that you can actually book a room in is Dalhousie Castle in Scotland. Its spooky rooms, walls, and corridors tell the myth of a tragic love story between a girl named Lady Catherine and a stable boy. A woeful tale that sounds like it comes straight out of a romance novel. Despite its reputation, the hotel is quite a popular destination for weddings. At many of these events, people have reported seeing strange silhouettes in their wedding photos. Still, it looks like a lovely venue to book an event. If you don't mind strangers showing up in your pictures, of course. Aren't castles truly fascinating? Not only are they just beautiful to look at, both inside and out, but they provide such a timeless glimpse into the history of ages long past. Of course, with all the rumors of ghosts and hauntings, it's hard to tell what is true and what isn't. But I like to think that the prevalence of these rumors speaks to the very human spirit of curiosity that's inside all of us, the desire to learn and to explore. And that, in and of itself, is truly special. Be sure to stay curious and watch your step.
Alrighty, folks. Gather around and let me tell you about the Manananggal, a real charmer of a mythical creature from Filipino folklore. She's often described as a lady who likes to snack on sleeping pregnant women. But here's the twist. During the day, she's all dolled up and looking like a total babe. But come nightfall, she detaches her torso and spreads her massive bat-like wings to fly off into the darkness in search of her next victim. And she doesn't just stop at pregnant ladies. Nope. Sometimes she'll use her good looks to lead astray men and take them to her secret hiding spot where she'll feast on their heart, intestines, and other internal organs all night long. Yikes. If you're ever faced with a Manananggal and want to stop her from reattaching her body before sunrise, just sprinkle some salt, ash, or crushed garlic on the remaining half of her body. Easy peasy, right? So keep an eye out for this winged wonder and don't forget the garlic! Okay, so check this out. In German folklore, there's this crazy creature called an owl. Basically, it's like a vampire, mixed with an incubus. And it wears this dope hat called a Tarncap that gives it all kinds of powers. This dude is all about preying on women at night by messing with their dreams. Oh, and it's into breast milk and sucking the blood of men and kids. The owl can shapeshift into all kinds of stuff, like cats, pigs, dogs, snakes, and even butterflies. And it's got this evil eye that can totally mess you up with bad luck or sickness. But don't worry, you can protect yourself by hiding a broomstick under your pillow, pointing your shoes towards the door, hanging iron horseshoes from the bedpost, or putting a mirror on your chest. And if all else fails, just leave the lights on all night and shove a lemon in its mouth if you catch it napping during the day. Meet the Pontia Nuk, a spooky ghost from Malay mythology. Legend has it that she was a woman who passed away while giving birth, and now she's out for revenge. She's not your average ghost either. She's got long black hair, sharp fingernails, and a blood-smeared white dress. But watch out, because she's also a master of disguise. She can transform into a beautiful woman to lure in her prey before ripping out their insides. If you're ever out at night and hear the cries of babies or feminine laughter, beware. That could be the Pontianak coming to get you. And if the sounds are quiet, she might be right around the corner. So keep your wits about you, and don't fall for any too-good-to-be-true ladies. Hey, did you know that according to Irish legend, every family has their very own banshee? This banshee lady is supposed to let out a piercing wail or shout when someone in the family is about to kick the bucket. Talk about a not-so-subtle warning, but don't let her eerie cry trick you. This banshee lady is said to be drop-dead gorgeous with long flowing locks and crimson eyes from all her crying. She's also known for wearing a gray shawl over her green threads. Fashionable and spooky? We're into it. Some people even say that this banshee can transform into a sweet-singing young lady who foretells the doom of the family. Yikes. And if that's not enough to give you goosebumps, she's also been spotted hunched over in the woods, crying her eyes out at night. Sounds like a real party animal, doesn't she? So next time you hear a blood-curdling scream in the middle of the night, just remember, it might just be your friendly neighborhood banshee giving you a heads up. Now let me tell you about the Kalupiluit. These creatures are like the boogeyman of the Arctic. They live near the ice floes and are known for snatching up kids who get too close to the water. But don't worry, it's just a myth to keep children safe. Now, the appearance of these critters varies from story to story, but they all have some things in common. They've got slimy green skin, long hair, and long fingernails. Their hands are webbed like a fish, and they wear these fancy parkas made out of eider duck feathers. Oh, and watch out for their flippers. One of them can emit a sound that'll paralyze you. But don't fret, you can outsmart them. Some clever Inuit hunters figured out that if they asked the Kalupiluit to shapeshift into a seal or whale, they could easily finish it and bring home a tasty catch. Yum! Some stories say that these creatures use kidnapped children to keep their hair looking fabulous. Talk about dedication to hair care. Others say that the kids are just devoured or used to fuel the Kalupiluit's youth. But here's a wild tale for you. There was once a grandma who couldn't feed her grandson, so she called upon a Kalupiluit to take him away. The tribe eventually got back on their feet, and a young couple went to rescue the boy. They found him tethered to seaweed by the Kalupiluit, but every time they got close, she'd drag him back underwater. They ended up waiting until sunrise to cut him loose. Yeah, the Kalupiluit may be spooky, but they're just looking out for the kiddos. And who knows? Maybe they'll give you some hair care tips if you're lucky enough to meet one. Let me present to you the scariest horse-like monster in all of Scotland, the Nucklavi, or Nuckalavie. This bad boy has a skinless body, a head 10 times bigger than a human's, and a breath so poisonous it can destroy animals and crops. So, it's got wicked powers that can cause chaos all over the islands. But fear not, because there's an old spirit known as the Sea Myther who can control this terrifying beast during the summer months. The Nuckalavie has roots in Norse and Orcadian folklore, and was first documented by the mysterious Joe Ben using some fancy Latin manuscripts back in the 16th century. Ernest Marwick, an Orcadian writer and folklorist, thinks that this evil sea creature is similar to the Norwegian Knock, the Nuggle of the Shetland, and the shape-shifting Kelpie or water Kelpie. So, if you're ever out and about in Scotland and come across this scary guy, just remember, call on the Sea Myther and run for your life. This dude is South African Tokolosha. It may look like a gremlin, but trust me, it's way more mischievous. Apparently, witches and shamans can summon them with their magical powers, but there are ways to keep these troublemakers in check. One way is to give them some curdled milk. Apparently it's their favorite. And trim their hair so they can see. If that doesn't work, you can call in a witch doctor to use some good old-fashioned magic to exorcise them away. Now, according to South African folklore, these tokoloshes are mostly invisible and can suck on a stone to stay that way. So, if you want to keep them away from your home, scatter some special blessed salts aka Tokoloshe salts, along your door frames and windowsills. Or if you're feeling extra cautious, put some bricks under your bed's legs. Better safe than sorry, right? Have you heard of the Chimera? She's a total monster, literally. This fire-breathing female hybrid is made up of all sorts of animal parts. Think lion-like body, goat-like head, and a tail that ends in a snake's head. According to Greek mythology, the Chimera is the child of Typhon and Echidna, and her sisters are Cerberus and Lernaean Hydra. Sounds like a family reunion, huh? But don't worry, our hero Bellerophon was up for the challenge. The king of Lycia sent him on a mission to defeat the fearsome Chimera, and Bellerophon was the greatest hero monsters were scared of. The Chimera was no match for Bellerophon and his trusty Pegasus. Even though the king was secretly hoping the Chimera would take out Bellerophon instead, in the end, justice prevailed, and the Chimera was defeated. Well, that's it for today.
Hi, are you ready to see some interesting but at the same time disgusting or uncanny things? Our list has 25 items with a wide selection from animals to shoes. This person's significant other has a collection of her daily contacts. She chooses to stack them behind the headboard of their bed. Such an interesting exhibition. I wonder what would have happened if they hadn't pulled the bed away for cleaning. Speaking of eyesight, here is a deep, dark wood. It looks like a place from a fairy tale, or a horror story. But visit Ben Lomond in New Zealand or Black Forest region in Germany, and you'll see these enchanted-looking woods. If you're into camping, you might have noticed by now that insects love to accompany you. In this picture, we see insects enjoying their life with campers. Luckily, there are ways to protect yourself from them. I'm talking about bug sprays or creams. Alternatively, you can make your own homemade essential oil repellent. Excuse me, what are these glowing things? They're the eyes of alligators. Dozens of alligators hang out in Florida swamps, their eyes glowing. The photographers got some help from their camera flash to better capture this effect. The animals' eyes look this way because they have a reflector system. You might be familiar with this look if you have a cat. See you later, alligator. Thunderstorms can be scary, especially if you see this in the sky. You're looking at a rarely seen phenomenon. It's a red space lightning, also called a sprite. To me, it looks like a jellyfish. When it comes to things people see in the sky, there are many hoaxes and legends, but this type of phenomenon is real. It's been confirmed by experts. What's that black circle in the picture? Has someone photoshopped it? Nope. Scientists have found a way to open a portal to another dimension. Okay, maybe not that. It's an object painted with Vanta black. In all seriousness, it's the darkest material known to science by now. This material was invented in 2014. It's the blackest shade of dark because it can absorb 99.96% of ultraviolet, visible, and infrared light. They've even produced a spray form of this substance. This material kind of plays with our perception of perspective. Three-dimensional objects appear to be two-dimensional. If you were given this material to paint one object, what would you pick? Let me show you human skin boots that are worth thousands of dollars. This customized footwear is designed to look like human legs and feet. They're made out of silicone. Let's travel in time a bit to see the world's oldest surviving diving suit from the 18th century. It now has the potential to be the monster in the closet. Raccoons like cat food, and here's some proof. I know you're hungry too, buddy, but your tiny hands look scary from this point of view, my friend. No, I'm taking it back. Your hands look cute, dear raccoon, compared to this person's kitchen. The idea is super cool and understandable. The well dates back to the mid-1700s, but I grew up watching the Ring movies. I'll pass on this one. Is it a Halloween special, or does this person use this car at all the seasons of the year? It's a side view mirror with a twist. Aha! Just in time. I'm planning to renovate my home, and this idea can come in handy. This is actually a flat hallway. Is this the World Wide Web? A person saw a giant spider web at work today. All these things on the internet make me wonder why so many people are delighted by mildly disgusting things. Science has the answer to this question. It's all related to how the emotion of disgust fundamentally works. Disgust is an emotion of avoidance. It works as a signal that something might be harmful to your body, so you should avoid it. Scientists believe that this feeling was originally formed by food. Charles Darwin, for example, claimed that the unusual appearance and odors of food triggered the feeling. It had a regulatory function as the gatekeeper emotion, the exclusionary emotion. Then, what's the allure of disgust? Let's ask psychological researchers. They believe that disgusting stimuli both catch and keep your attention. That's why even though disgust is perceived as an unpleasant feeling, the emotion has evolved to simultaneously get people's attention. Sometimes, weird things don't just capture your attention, you can even enjoy them along with many other people. ASMR videos are very pleasant and relaxing. Lots of people don't find them repulsive. On the contrary, they feel calm and euphoric. Here's a close-up of an ant. There's more than 12,000 ant species in the world. I wonder whether all of them look like this one up close. Ants seem so harmless and friendly when they sneak into our picnic basket. Turns out some of them can fly, and some aren't as tiny as regular ants. Since we're talking about animals, this is the mouth of a leatherback sea turtle. It's the largest living turtle. Plus, these turtles keep the record of being the heaviest non-crocodilian reptile. They grow up to 5 feet 11 inches long and weigh 1,100 pounds. If you see one, you can easily recognize it since they lack a bony shell compared to other modern sea turtles. I know it looks like a person wearing a costume, but this is a harpy eagle. Now, do you want to see a Spanish dancer? Oh no, we don't have a flamenco type of vibe here. It's an animal. This fella is a sea slug. It has a scientific name, but it's hard to spell, so people nicknamed it this way. You might see a strong resemblance to a dancer's skirt. It's time to see some weird food. This is a lemon just going about its daily business, getting rotten. Let's visit the world of mold for a while. Mold spores are like tiny ninjas that can infiltrate your food. They're everywhere, and they love to set up camp on your bread, meat, and fruit. They create fuzzy little blotches that can make you ill. You should watch out for the ones that produce toxins. Luckily, not all molds are bad. Some of them, like the ones that make blue cheese, are delicious and healthy. What does mold need to form? Water, food, suitable air quality, and the perfect temperature. Then mold can grow on pretty much any food. Lastly, if you do spot mold on your food, don't just cut off the icky part and assume the rest is safe to eat. Mold can penetrate deep into your food. It's probably best just to toss that moldy food away and not risk it if you're not sure if it's safe to eat or not. I don't know what to say. It was cream cheese in another life. Oh look, a baby seal. Or mold. This person was doing research on molds. They leave us with Aspergillus flavus, which chooses to live peacefully. Can we stop for a moment and talk about why they let it continue? Now, I wonder how tall a plant growing out of a carpet can get. Here's another one. Do you want to see cat vomit that was left to mature for a few days? Ew, but wow, at the same time, they found mushrooms growing on blankets while cleaning a family's house. The feeling of disgust appeared a long time ago. Shakespeare's tragedy Titus Andronicus was similar to our present-day slasher movies. People loved it back then too, similar to why most spectators love Tarantino. Is it just me, or is this strawberry shaped like an animal? It even has a mark for an eye. I hope you were drawn to things that should, by all rights, compel or frighten you. See you next time!
New York City's Herald Square Hotel. A maid with a cart of clean linen is walking along the corridor on the 5th floor and making the bed in each room. She cleaned rooms 550, 551, and 553. She skipped the room 552 because she knew that the tenants wouldn't open the door. Strange woman had been living there for more than 20 years. Hotel records said 3 women had checked into 552. Ida Wood with her sister and her daughter. No one had ever seen them, but they always paid their bills on time. They ordered milk, coffee, bacon, eggs, and other food almost every day. The messenger brought it up to them and received a dime as a tip every time. The residents of room 552 did not allow anyone to clean it. Jesus. Only twice in all her time working here, the maid managed to persuade Ida to replace dirty sheets with clean ones. Even then, the mysterious woman passed the laundry through a slightly open door and didn't show her face. And then, one day, everything changed. In the spring of 1931, at 4 p.m., the door opened. 93-year-old Ida Wood looked out of the room and asked the maid to call the doctor. Ida's sister, unfortunately, had fallen very ill. People quickly gathered around room 552. Doctors, hotel managers, lawyers, and cleaners. The image, what they saw inside, stuck in the heads of many New Yorkers for a very long time. News about Ida Wood spread almost all over the US. Months and even years later, people were still discussing this mysterious woman. But to understand what happened here, let's find out who Ida Woods was. Ida came to New York in 1857 at the age of 19, and her last name was Mayfield. Her father was some rich sugar plantation owner in the South. At some point, she decided to change her life and move north. Here in New York, she quickly became a popular girl. Beautiful, young, and very smart, Ida easily figured out who to be friends with and who to avoid. She knew all the gossip and social life news of New York. She was always a welcome guest at any party. Many men were delighted with her beauty and intelligence, but no one could get into a relationship with her, since no one met her requirements. Once, Ida even wrote a letter to one of the most influential men in the city, Benjamin Wood. He was a well-known entrepreneur, owned a shipping company and a popular newspaper. Benjamin's brother was the ex-mayor of New York. Ida's letter was romantic and quite witty. Ida asked Ben for a meeting, and he agreed. When he saw her in real life for the first time, he immediately fell in love with her. From that moment, Ida's life changed completely. She now lived in luxury, and any door was open to her. Thanks to her position, she even danced with the Prince of Wales and managed to meet Abraham Lincoln and many other celebrities. So in 1867, she became Ben's wife. Ida didn't behave like a fortune hunter. She was a good wife and loved her husband. They had a daughter called Emma, and life was perfect, except for one thing. Ben was very fond of gambling. On some days, he managed to win a huge prize, and others he lost a lot of money. Unlike him, Ida could save money and knew its value, as she was afraid of losing it. So she made a deal with her husband. When he lost, he'd give Ida an amount equal to the loss. When he won, he'd give his wife half of the winnings. Benjamin agreed to the terms. Ida hoped she would help her husband forget gambling, but he went on with it. On one hand, Ida was worried about this, but on the other hand, her wealth was growing rapidly. In 1900, Ben passed away. Journalists found out that Mr. Wood didn't own any real estate and had no valuable property. There wasn't much money left in his account, and everyone understood that his huge fortune was in his wife's hands now. Ida Wood became one of the wealthiest women in New York. She owned not only property and money, but also the newspaper. For the next few months, she was running this business, attending many social events, traveling a lot, and even donating a lot of money to charity. But then, in 1901, something happened. It seemed like money was starting to drive her mad. She felt she was spending too much and could run out of money, or someone could take it away from her. She sold the newspaper for more than $250,000, along with the expensive possessions she acquired over the years: outfits, paintings, sculptures, furniture, and houses. She put all the money in her bank account. Meanwhile, the financial situation was starting to heat up. People were nervous about the coming crisis. Ida felt it as well, and this made her emotional state even worse. In 1907, Ida came back to the bank and withdrew about $1 million from her accounts. She didn't trust banks and decided to keep that money to herself. After that, she, along with her daughter Emma and her sister, Miss Mary Mayfield, rented a room at the Herald Square Hotel. They brought all their personal belongings there, as well as suitcases filled with money. She didn't allow any contact with the outside world, forbade the maids to enter her room, and asked to leave food next to the door. This is how she lived for the next few decades. Then, at the age of over 70, Ida's daughter became very ill. She was taken to a hospital where she unfortunately passed away. Ida stayed to live with her sister, and in spring of 1931, Miss Mary Mayfield became ill too. Ida decided to leave the hotel and finally end her seclusion. Her room was super dirty and messy. There were pieces of food and garbage on the floor. The two old residents looked mentally unstable. They were super thin and wearing dirty old clothes. There were stacks of yellowed newspapers, boxes of half-eaten crackers, balls of thread and rope, sheets of old wrapping paper, and several large suitcases with millions of dollars inside. Among the many things they found there were securities with valuable shares that hadn't been cashed out for decades. And by that moment, their total value had grown to $175,000. The sister passed away and the doctors took her out of the room. Ida helped them, but she was afraid to leave the door open, and she had her reasons. Ida had 54 suitcases full of money. Some of them were stored in a warehouse in the suburbs. They were filled with fabrics and dresses from Europe, expensive necklaces, bracelets, watches, and cut gems. They found a $40,000 necklace in an old cracker box. They found another $250,000 in a shoebox. One of the nurses caring for Ida discovered $500,000 in cash in her dress in a hidden pocket. Everyone understood that Ida couldn't live on her own. She was sick and weak, so they moved her to another room on another floor. Lawyers and next of kin recognized Ida as incapacitated and began to count her fortune. During the investigation, the news about the wealthy old lady spread all over New York. There were people who called themselves relatives of Ida, and each of them claimed a rich inheritance. Ida's health was getting worse. When they brought her water and food, she asked how much it costs. If something was more expensive than a single dollar, Ida refused to accept it. She believed that they kept her captive, so she often looked out of the window and screamed for help. She considered almost everyone around her enemies, except for the nurses, whom she believed to be her confidants. She told them episodes from her life and shared her secrets. On March 12, 1932, Ida finally passed away. Soon, a large-scale court case began to split her property and money. More than 1,000 applicants came to the meeting. Many of them were from Louisiana. They said they were Ida's relatives from her father's side. Meanwhile, an investigation about Ida's identity continued. They found out Ida never even lived in the South. Her father was not a sugar plantation owner, and her real name was Ellen Walsh. She was born and raised in the rough neighborhoods of Dublin. But the most interesting thing was that her daughter Emma wasn't her child. She was her sister. No one knew why they pretended it was otherwise. It's possible that Ida's husband knew this, but he never revealed his wife's secrets. Ida's big secret got out, but some questions about her remain. How did a poor girl from Dublin manage to get into the circle of wealthy bohemians of New York so easily and quickly? Why did her sister pretend to be her daughter, and what exactly caused her insanity? We're still discussing this
Imagine, you're on a vacation and your hotel reservation gets cancelled. Bummer. You'll have to find another place to stay, right?
Yeah.
You start Googling for accommodations when you stumble upon this ad. It mentions a hotel that seemingly has an infinite number of rooms. They'll surely have a room available for you, right?
Oh, yeah.
You arrive at the hotel and you're greeted at the check-in desk by the hotel manager. This receptionist in particular sure does look special. You'll soon find out why. He starts by saying all his rooms are booked. The infinite number of rooms are all filled by an infinite number of guests. But wait, the manager might have a solution to still check you in. Told you he was special.
Oh, yeah.
He begins to explain that all the rooms in the hotel are numbered, starting from room number 1. It goes on to room number 2, then 3, moving forward infinitely. At this hotel, there is only one person allowed per room. So if there is one person in each one of the rooms, how will he make space for you? Simple. He asks each one of the guests to move down a room. This way, the person staying in room number 1 moves over to room number 2. That person in room number 3, and so on. Once every one of those infinite numbers of guests moves down a room, the first one becomes available for you to stay.
Ooh,
While you're waiting at the reception, a bus shows up, wanting to check in too. 100 guests are waiting inside the bus. The receptionist applies the same strategy. He moves everyone down 100 rooms until the first 100 rooms become empty and ready to receive guests. Word rapidly spreads around that there's a hotel that can fit a lot of guests. Obviously, more buses like this one start to arrive, and they're not just a lot of buses. An infinite number of buses with an infinite number of passengers get lined up at the hotel entrance. Our receptionist is clever yet again. He opens his infinite agenda with an infinite number of pages and starts preparing a table. This one too has an infinite number of columns and rows. In this table, there's a row for each bus, with the row at the top for all the people that are already in the hotel. He uses the columns to show the position each person occupies. He's got room number 1, room number 2, and so on. He moves on to fill the table with bus 1, seat 1, then bus 1, seat 2. His goal is to make sure each person gets their unique code. This code is made out of a combination of the vehicle and the seat number. He then proceeds to show everyone how he'll assign the rooms. Starting with the top left corner of his table, he draws a line that zigzags back and forth across the table, going over each person exactly once. If he could pull at that line from each end, he'd transform an infinite by infinite table into one single row. Once the order from that line is defined, he assigns each room number to its designated visitor. Everyone fits once again. Just as our brilliant receptionist is about to take a break, a big bus appears at the hotel entrance. Not a regular vehicle, but a party bus. It has no seats. But as you can already imagine by now, this one has an infinite number of passengers too. As they step down from the bus, you listen to their names. They sure are weird. Soon enough, one of the new party visitors starts to explain why they call each other the way they do. Since there's an infinite number of them in the bus, they've all decided to use unique identifiers, only using the letters X and Z. To keep with the theme, these names are also infinitely long. One person might be named XXXXXXXXXX, with letters going on indefinitely, while another may be named XZ, 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 XZ again, with its name going on forever. After thinking about it for a bit, you figure out that there's a person for each possible infinite sequence of these two letters. But just as the people from the party bus start entering the hotel, the receptionist says that he's not able to fit all of them into the hotel. "It might be a bit complicated to explain this time," he says, "but let me try." He starts by opening up his infinite agenda once again. He then proceeds to assign rooms to the people on the bus. Let's say room number 1 is for the person named XXXXXXXXXX, while room number 2 is for the person named XZ, 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 XZ. To finish up, he'd technically have to keep going, allocating a different string of X's and Z's to each of his infinite number of rooms. "Here's where it gets tricky," he says, "because even if we complete this infinite list of names, I can still name a person who won't be assigned a room." All you have to do is to figure out who that person is to take the first letter of their name and switch it, so X becomes Z. Then you take the second letter of the second name and switch it from Z to an X. If you keep doing that, the name you write down is surely not going to appear on the list. You might have stumbled upon a hotel with an infinite number of rooms, but that's not to say it can fit literally everyone, because those rooms are infinite, but they are countably infinite. Even if it would take forever, you could technically count all the rooms in the hotel. The reason why you can't squeeze all the people from the party bus is that those people are uncountably infinite. There's no systematic way to identify them. When you look at it this way, it does make you think, are some infinities bigger than others? This theory is called David Hilbert's Infinite Grand Hotel, and it's not the only one of its kind. The friendship theory is a funny one too. It means that most people have fewer friends than their friends have.
Hello.
So, if you have 3 friends, chances are that your friends have more than 3 friends each. It's like a puzzle. It's hard to figure out why this happens, but it's true. It was first noticed back in 1991 by a sociologist named Scott Feld. He made this unusual discovery when looking at existing social networks. He calculated the average number of friends that a person has and then compared this number to the average number of friends those respective friends had too. The interesting part happened when he noticed the second number is always bigger. Problem is, there's no logical explanation for this phenomenon. Why is this important, you might ask? Because it affects the way we perceive ourselves in relation to others. Most of us look at our friends as being happier, richer, and more popular than they are. But it's important to remember that almost everyone is in the same situation. Then, there are Zeno's theories, which are puzzles about motion. They ask questions like, if you have to take half of the steps to get somewhere, and then half of those steps, and then half of those steps, will you ever get there? The answer is yes. Even though it might seem like you'll never get to the end, if you keep taking half of the steps, you will eventually get there. It may seem weird, but all these theories are in fact paradoxes. In math, there are mathematical conclusions so absurd that it's difficult to understand, even though every step you took before reaching that said conclusion is correct. In most scenarios, the paradox is the contradiction of the statements themselves. In David Hilbert's Infinite Grand Hotel, for example, these statements are that the hotel can be fully booked and have rooms available at the same time. Picture a ghost town, abandoned buildings covered in graffiti, rusting remains of cars, cracks in the roads, and now add to that a thick blanket of black smoke coming from under the ground. And the ground itself is hot to the touch. You're entering Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia used to be a lively place during the 1800s and up to the 1960s. Its rich coal mines attracted a lot of people to work and live there. But in 1962, one of those mines accidentally caught fire, which started to spread underground. Coal is a slowly burning fuel, so the citizens continued to live peacefully for almost another 2 decades until the fire began to undermine the town. One of the worst accidents was when a giant sinkhole appeared out of nowhere in the backyard of a house in Centralia. Luckily, no one was hurt, but after that, people started leaving the place. In the following 30 years, almost everyone moved out, though not all. As of 2020, 5 people still live there. But other than that, Centralia is by all means a ghost town, and crumbling abandoned buildings and cracked roads are just a minor part of it. The most disturbing thing about this place is the smoke billowing from under the ground through cracks. The fires down below are still raging, heating up the surface and slowly destroying the remains of the town. In fact, this was what inspired the famous fictional town of Silent Hill. The blaze is estimated to last for another 250 years, and by that time, there will be nothing but scorched wasteland in the area. If you're afraid of bugs, then this place will probably be your worst nightmare. The Gomantong Caves in Malaysia could be one of the most picturesque places in the world, if not for their dwellers. First off, there are bats. Over 2 million of these animals live in the vast expanses of the caves. They're easily scared, but I guess you don't want that. Millions of winged horrors flying at you in a panic aren't to be taken lightly. Secondly, there are cockroaches. And while the number of bats is more or less determined, the roaches swarming the floors and walls of the caves are unaccountable. There are so many of them that you won't be able to make a single step without a dozen of these creepers crawling up your legs. And finally, if you manage not to scream from the cockroaches and wake up hordes of bats, you might be rewarded with other wonderful dwellers of the caves. Those include snakes, scorpions, and giant venomous centipedes. Charming. Still, the caves are open to the public, and there are lots of people who visit this place. Right in the middle of nowhere in the empty wastelands of the Karakum Desert in Central Asia, there's a great hole in the ground that burns forever. It's called the Darvaza Gas Crater, and it's an actual pit, broad and deep, that has been ablaze for over half a century now. The locals call it the gate to the underworld, and the view is indeed frightening. There is no way to extinguish the flames, and scientists believe the crater will keep burning for centuries on end. The pit apparently appeared in 1971 when a group of engineers scouted the area and thought they stumbled upon an oil deposit. It turned out to be a natural gas pocket though, and when the drilling rig started working on the site, the ground collapsed. The engineers were afraid that the poisonous gas might put nearby towns in danger, so they thought it best to set it on fire and let it burn out in a few weeks. But as we can see, the blaze is still going strong. The crater has since become a popular tourist attraction, but despite that, it still poses some danger, so efforts are being made to finally extinguish the gates of the underworld. Imagine seeing an insanely venomous snake right next to your foot. Terrifying enough, huh? And now, multiply that experience by a couple thousand times, when no matter where you try to run, there are similar snakes all around. That's Snake Island for you, and the name couldn't describe it better. The island is located not far from the coast of Brazil, and is home to thousands of golden lancehead vipers. About 11,000 years ago, the sea levels rose and separated the island from the mainland, and lots of lancehead vipers became trapped on it. Their mainland siblings are venomous as well, but not as much. The golden variety had to evolve to survive, and oh, they did. Since there's not so many land animals for the vipers to hunt, they adapted to hunting birds instead, and for their venom to be effective, it had to be instant. So, golden lanceheads developed a venom that is 5 times more potent than the regular variety. This helped the snakes thrive, and now there are 1 to 5 vipers per square meter of the island. It is considered so dangerous that Brazil banned all visitors, like someone would really want to go there. Lost in the woods at night, you suddenly stumble upon a human figure. Relieved, you touch their shoulder to ask for directions, but it's hard as stone and covered in moss. And then you look into the face of the person and your mouth opens in horror. It's anything but human. My advice would be not to wander around southeast Finland at night if you don't want a shocking experience, because it's here that a renowned Finnish sculptor made his eerie sculpture garden in his own backyard. The garden's main exhibition consists of 200 human figures in various yoga poses. But as you walk around, you may come across more sinister-looking works, such as cloaked figures with its arms stretched forward and deep black gaps for eyes. Adding to the creepiness are real human teeth in the mouths of some statues. The garden itself appeared because the sculptor was a recluse and didn't want to leave his home, and when asked to lend some of his sculptures to museums, he would say he needed to ask them if they wanted to. It seems they never did, though. Creepy statues are eerie enough, but how about creepy dolls? If you ever find yourself in Japan and want to give yourself some chills down the spine, make sure to visit Nagoro. It's a tiny village in the south of the country. Driving by its houses and yards, you will see villagers sitting on their porches or tending to their gardens. Nothing special. Until you realize they're not moving and never will because they're life-sized dolls. One of the local residents turned her hometown in 2002 and made a hobby of creating stuffed scarecrows in gardens and fields. But then it turned from a practical thing into a sort of memorial job. Whenever any of her neighbors left the village or passed away, she would make a life-size doll in their image. She made them as she remembered them best, so all her dolls are doing something normal people would. They're sitting, standing, lying on the ground, and there are even full classrooms of dolls in the local school. But probably the eeriest thing about this installation is that the human population of Nagoro is less than 30 people, and the scarecrows outnumber the living dwellers more than 10 to 1. There are over 350 dolls in the village now. As their maker remembers, there were around 300 people living in Nagoro when she was a child, and now, for 20 years, she has been commemorating all of them. About 3,000 visitors come to Nagoro every year, and many of them return in the following years as well. The village is pretty hard to reach because it's located on one of the less traveled islands of Japan, and the nearest train station is an hour away. But that doesn't stop the tourists who want to see the wonderfully creepy scarecrows with their own eyes.
Have you ever realized that you're dreaming in the middle of a dream? Oh, wait, this isn't real. Then you kind of write the script of your dream while you're still in it. Lucid dreaming is a technique allowing you to control your dreams. Here's everything you should know about this practice and other cool facts about dreams. Dreams. They're mysterious and unpredictable. You remember them perfectly when you first wake up, but then they seem to fade away. Lucid dreaming changes these features. Basically, you know you're asleep and dreaming. With that level of consciousness, you shape the dream's narrative with your imagination. Several factors affect the recollection of dreams, such as how many hours you sleep and even your diet. Studies reveal that people who make less effort to remember what they dream about during the night can more easily enter the lucid state. If you've never had this type of dream, that's also okay. Good news, people can learn and get better at this with time. In fact, there's more than one way to practice having lucid dreams. A researcher tested the effectiveness of 5 different techniques, working with hundreds of participants. The first technique of lucid dreaming is reality testing. Here, the participants are expected to examine their physical environment repeatedly every day to perceive its reality. The goal is to turn this behavior into a habit. In that way, participants can make reality checks in dreams and understand that they're dreaming. You can also do reality checks during the day. This will enhance metacognition, which is the awareness of your own thoughts. You get used to differentiating real life and dreams. You can check the time to see if it's running normally, because you can't really comprehend the flow of time when you're in a dream. Or press your finger into your palm to feel if it's solid or not. Applying these reality tests when you're awake will prepare your brain to try them in a dream and enter lucidity. The second technique is called Wake Back to Bed. This one suggests you go to bed and set the alarm to wake up after 5 hours. You stay awake for a short time and do an activity to stimulate your mind, like writing or reading. Then you go back to sleep. This way, you go straight back to the REM phase. You can dream during this stage of your sleep cycle. So, by kind of tricking your conscious brain, you make it stay active as you re-enter REM sleep. The next technique has one of the highest success rates. Mnemonic induction of lucid dreams or mild for short, also asks you to wake up after 5 hours of sleep. And when you wake up, you should remind yourself that you intend to realize that you are dreaming the next time you go to sleep. You can literally say to yourself, "Next time I'm dreaming, I'll remember I'm dreaming." Think of our brains like supercomputers. You program your computer with this phrase. When you notice that you're sleepy, focus on the most recent dream you had. Try to pick up a dream sign. This could be something that felt surreal about the narrative of your dream. Your intention is to remember, return, and visualize that dream to become lucid in it. Okay, I know no one probably wants to leave their cozy bed and wake up in the middle of the night, but the senses-initiated lucid dream technique also works like that. This practice suggests that the participant should focus on noises, sights, and physical sensations after waking up. They can control the action and the content if they concentrate on each stimulus for 20 seconds before falling asleep again. This one is among the most effective techniques. The last technique is a combo. When the alarm wakes you up after 5 hours of sleep, you focus on the sounds and the sensations you get from your surroundings. Then you remind yourself of the whole point of doing it with the help of the intention phrase. It requires practice and takes time. Little by little, people become more mindful of their dreams. Did you know that younger people have a natural tendency to have lucid dreams? A Harvard study found that most younger people experience these dreams in their growing up process. The results show us that people don't actually learn, but rather remember how to become lucid. This means we have the know-how all along. We just need to practice it. You might think that using your imagination to control your dreams can make you feel tired, but it's the opposite. Once you become lucid, your brain moves into the gamma wave brain state. And this is cool. Lucid dreaming is like a natural state of meditation. And you wake up with more energy. Do lucid dreams have other benefits? Yes, they're good for your overall well-being. You get vivid, real-life experiences. You can't do some of the things you can dream of when you're awake. It may help consolidate motor skills and ease anxiety. What's even more interesting is that your brain also gets benefits from lucid dreaming. The area of your brain called the prefrontal cortex gets reactivated, and your neuroplasticity becomes engaged. This is the ability of your brain to rewire itself. For example, to enhance a newly learned skill. Studies reveal that if you practice an athletic discipline in a lucid dream, your brain rewires itself in a way that makes you get better at that discipline. These types of dreams are also used to treat recurring nightmares. It's used as a tool to overcome the stress people have after traumatic events. This method is proven. Some psychotherapists use it during their sessions to help their counselees integrate their trauma. Researchers say that lucid dreaming has the potential to heal if people become lucid and apply some visualized healing techniques under the surveillance of their therapists. We've talked about the benefits, but can lucid dreaming be dangerous? It's generally safe, but there are risks too. It's hard not to notice that many of the techniques require interrupting your sleep cycle. This might be bad for people who have existing mental health conditions. Another side effect of a broken sleep cycle may include dissociation. If you can't figure out what is a dream and what's real, that's a problem. There's also something called sleep paralysis. You know, the times when you're conscious, but you can't move. Some people can't even open their eyes, and you just desperately wait there for your brain to let you move. So it's super important to consult a therapist or sleep specialist before trying to enter lucidity. Let's say your therapist or sleep specialist has approved your work with lucid dreaming, and you're excited to start. What should you take into account? The answer is sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene means that your daily actions, especially before bedtime, have an impact on your overall sleep quality. A healthy sleep habit requires a comfortable sleep environment and a consistent sleep schedule. If you have those, you can get a restful sleep and rise and shine the next day. If you sleep in a cool and dark room, that's a plus. You've probably heard hundreds of times about the good effects of moving electronic devices out of your bedroom, or stopping looking at screens at least 30 minutes before taking a nap. It works in favor of lucid dreaming, too. This routine helps your brain to be in the mood for deep sleep, where you can dive into REM. People born blind have sensory dreams instead of image-based ones. Instead of the sense of sight, dreams are shaped by other senses. Other than that, the intensity of dreams is equal. By comparison, people who become blind later in life still have visual dreams. Here's a bonus. Animals also have dreams. Your four-pawed best friend sometimes goes on an adventure in their sleep. So, have you ever had lucid dreams?
The Avenue of the Baobabs is probably the most incredible and surreal avenue in the world. To see it, head to Madagascar. It's not the only giant thing you can find there. This island is also home to huge comet moths. Their wingspan is crazy, up to 8 inches, so you don't even need to look for iffy bottles with "Drink Me" signs on it to significantly shrink in size. Huacuchina looks like an oasis in the middle of a desert. Oh wait, it actually is a desert, but unlike many others, it has a bunch of clubs and bars. A fun thing you can do there is sandboarding and even bodyboarding. Make sure you've got the glasses on and your mouth's tightly closed. The Tunnel of Love in Klivan, Ukraine is completely covered with plants. Some couples believe that if they go through this 2.5-mile-long tunnel together, their dream might come true. Be careful what you wish for, though. There are trains going through this tunnel 3 times every day. The dark hedges in Northern Ireland seem a bit creepy because of the legend that surrounds this alley. The locals say the road is haunted by the ghost called the Grey Lady. By the way, guess what TV show was filmed here? In northern Portugal, there's a wonderful house that looks like a prehistoric building, almost like a cave, but it's an actual cottage. It's called Casa do Penedo, which literally means boulder house, and it's a tiny museum now. From far away, it looks like a huge stone and a perfect dwelling for some mysterious creature. Another such abode is in Italy, somewhere in the middle of Rishenzi. It's an artificial lake created as a result of flooding. This place is famous for its 14th century church standing right in the water. So the only time you can get there on foot is in winter, when and if the lake freezes over. One lake you can definitely take a stroll on is Baikal. No wonder, located in the heart of Siberia, it freezes over every winter. It's so large that it has 27 islands on it. It's also the deepest lake in the world, reaching almost 5,400 feet. Off to hot waters. Grand Prismatic Spring in Wyoming is the largest spring in the U.S. and the 3rd largest water source of this kind in the world. Don't you dare swim there. Not only is it boiling hot, you'll also have to face a fine for that. Enjoy it safely on the shore. Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy, France is a top fairy tale destination if you ever wanted to feel like a prince or princess. The magnificent castle is surrounded by water, but not all the time. It all depends on the moon. The highest tide can be seen 36 to 48 hours after a full moon. When I was there, I saw only a deserted area with a few puddles. A night sky with thousands of stars has those romantic vibes, but the literal sea of stars probably has even more. Welcome to the Maldives' Vathu Island. The beaches here glow blue at night, thanks to the bioluminescent plankton in the water. You didn't think these were real stars, did you? If the stars don't interest you that much, you'd likely like the sky full of balloons. Cappadocia, a region in Turkey, is originally famous for incredible rock formations, but it also attracts visitors thanks to its wonderful hot air balloon experience. For those who always wanted to walk on clouds whenever they peeped out of the window on a plane, good news, guys! You can do just that in Bolivia. It's not a literal cloud, but an extremely large salt tile. It's called Salar de Uyuni, and it mirrors the sky during the wet season, creating that illusion of infinity and walking on the sky. In Colombia, make sure to visit the Las Lajas Sanctuary. To get to the church itself, you'll need to cross a bridge that seems to be hung right in the air, and there's some fast-flowing water underneath you. Well, we're back in France. It's Colmar-Alsace region, and just look at these houses. Colorful facades made of timber, canals all adorned with flowers, and cobblestone streets. Germany is full of cities with these cozy gingerbread houses, and Rothenburg ob der Tauber is not an exception. It's an almost fully preserved medieval town with dozens of multicolored facades and authentic taverns. It looks especially magical in winter, with snow-dusted roofs and awesome holiday markets. In Iceland, many houses have grass roofs. Such dwellings are called turf houses, and grass on top of them has multiple functions. It not only decorates, but also protects houses from heavy rains. The grass grows in the foundation made of lava rock and needs regular trimming. In Costa Rica, on the islands of Isla de Caño, there's an assortment of about 300 circular objects of different sizes. Locals call them las bolas, which is simply the balls in English. These stones have an almost perfectly round shape. Some of them are huge, weighing up to 16 tons each. They're also made of different materials: gabbro, limestone, and sandstone. They're considered to have been put in lines in front of the chief's houses. Nobody knows for sure where those balls came from, but some myths claim they originated from Atlantis. A place called Angel Falls speaks for itself. It does look idyllic. It's the world's tallest uninterrupted waterfall, many times taller than Niagara Falls. The water falls in cascades, and much of it evaporates on its way down, which creates an illusion of those beautiful clouds. If you're into dazzling shine, try visiting the Grand Crystal Cave in Mexico. You can only do so under professional supervision, but it's definitely worth it. Chances are you've never seen a crystal twice your body size. In Morocco, there's a town called Chefchaouen in which the prevalent color is sky blue. Not azure, not cornflower blue, and not turquoise. Most dwellings there are painted the most beautiful shade of blue you've ever seen. The place is not easily accessible. It's located in the Rif Mountains. One more sky blue place is Santorini, which is probably a bit more easily accessible. The dwellings are painted white, but almost all the roofs are of a vibrant blue shade. The white paint is to keep the heat away and make sure you've got the most Instagrammable location. In Slovenia, don't forget to visit one of the world's most spectacular spots, Lake Bled. The color is truly aquamarine. Nope, it's not photoshopped. Right in the middle of the lake, there's a cliff which is actually a small island. There's a castle and a couple of other dwellings too. To sweeten the trip even more, try a piece of bled cream cake baked with a secret recipe. When you first see a photo of Moraine Lake in Canada, you'll probably believe it's either photoshopped or painted by a professional artist. But this place is real, combining a myriad of blue shades that feel so idyllic you don't want to ever leave here. Bagan, the mysterious land located in Myanmar, has all the ingredients to be a truly out-of-the-fairy-tale spot. You can enjoy all the exotic vegetation, misty mountain landscape, and numerous temples riding a bike, or you can see it from a hot air balloon. The Philippines have a bunch of things to see, but there's definitely something special about local beaches. If you ever go there, the hidden beach in the El Nido itinerary is the perfect place to enjoy some solitude. The beach is securely protected from boats and unwanted weather conditions by limestone coves. In the Italian region of Liguria, there's dozens of precious beaches you'll never forget. Bay of Poets in Porto Venere is one of them. The beach is located right on the cliff, and there's also underwater caves you can swim into. It's called Bay of Poets because the legend says Byron got inspired there, swimming across the bay in search of his muse, which he eventually found. The area Cinque Terre is in Liguria too, and is really close, so if you always wanted to see those Italian cliffs and sea wallpaper in real life, head there. The legend has it that seamen would paint their houses bright colors to find the way home easier. The Isle of Skye, Scotland, could be a perfect decoration for some historical TV show about proud knights and their maidens. There are also probably some fairies in the fairy pools in Fairy Glen. The must-see here is the Old Man of Storr, a hill that combines rocky and steep sides. There are no legends or anything, but it's one of the most inspiring and photographed areas on our planet. At first sight, if you take a look at it from the land, it'll seem just a stone bridge. But its main secret is to look at it from the water. The bridge reflection forms a perfect circle that looks like some sort of a portal to a hidden underwater world. It's located in Saxony and is just